Please, Your Honor. She's all I have. The gavel struck the bench like a gunshot, splitting the silence. Serena stood frozen, both hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles had turned pale. Behind her, a tiny voice called out, "Mommy." And just like that, in a cold, fluorescent-lit courtroom, a mother lost her daughter. But there was a man sitting in the very last row. He wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't family. He was the one person in that room with the authority to end that judge's entire career. And what he did next, you won't see coming. Join me as we dive into this powerful story. But before we do, my coworker laughed right in my face and said I'd never reach 10,000 subscribers. Let's prove him wrong together. Hit subscribe, hit like, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Now let's get into it. Let me tell you about the man in the last row. Marcus Holt sat perfectly still, back straight, hands folded over a small leather notebook resting on his knee. He wore a faded navy polo shirt, khaki trousers, and plain brown shoes that had seen better days. No watch. No rings. Nothing that would make anyone look twice. To the bailiff, he was just another citizen attending a public hearing. To the court clerk, he was nobody. To Judge Raymond Foster, sitting up on that bench, Marcus Holt didn't even exist. But Marcus Holt was far from nobody. 3 blocks away, parked quietly along a side street behind a row of oak trees, a black Bentley sat with the engine humming. His driver, a man named Thomas, who had been with him for 11 years, was reading the newspaper and waiting. He would wait as long as it took. He always did. Because Marcus Holt was the founder and sole owner of Holt Capital Partners, a real estate development empire valued at over $4 billion. His company had constructed shopping centers, apartment complexes, and office towers across 6 states. His name appeared on the donor walls of 3 universities. His signature had closed deals that reshaped entire city blocks. But that's not why he was sitting in courtroom C of the Harris County Courthouse on a Tuesday morning in September. Marcus was also the chairman of the Texas Commission on Judicial Conduct. Most people have never heard of that commission, and that's part of the problem. It's the body responsible for examining complaints filed against judges, misconduct, bias, abuse of authority. When a judge crosses the line, this commission is supposed to step in. They can investigate. They can discipline. And in serious cases, they can recommend that a judge be removed from the bench entirely. Marcus had served on the commission for 6 years. But for the past 4, he had been doing something most chairmen never bothered to do. He went to courtrooms himself. Unannounced. Not in a suit. Not with an entourage. He dressed down, found a seat in the back row, and observed. 2 to 3 times a month, he would turn up at different courthouses across Texas. Family courts, small claims hearings, eviction proceedings. The kinds of courtrooms that never made the evening news. The kinds of rooms where people's entire lives were decided in 45 minutes by a judge who sometimes barely lifted his gaze from the paperwork. Marcus believed something simple. Justice only functioned when somebody was watching. And in family court, almost nobody was watching. No cameras, no jury, no reporters, just a judge, 2 opposing sides, and a decision that could shatter a family. It was the most powerful courtroom in the country, and it had the least oversight. He had written about it in his annual commission reports. He had spoken about it at legal conferences. But words alone didn't change anything, so he started showing up in person. Today, he was here for a specific reason. 3 anonymous complaints had landed on his desk over the previous 5 months, all about the same judge. Judge Raymond Foster, Family Court Division, Harris County. The complaints painted a consistent picture. Foster favored the side with the expensive attorney. He rushed through cases where one party couldn't afford legal representation. He interrupted. He dismissed evidence without proper review. One complaint stated it plainly. He treats low-income people like they're wasting his time. Marcus had read each complaint carefully, highlighted passages, written notes. But complaints were just words on paper. He needed to witness it for himself. So here he was, notebook open, pen ready, watching Judge Foster adjust his glasses and shuffle through a stack of files as if he was sorting junk mail. Marcus had no idea that what he was about to witness in the next 45 minutes would not only confirm every single complaint on his desk, it would change the life of a woman he had never met. And quietly, in ways he could not yet imagine, it would change his own. The courtroom door swung open. A woman walked in. She was young, early 30s, maybe. She had pulled her hair back tight, the way women do when they want to appear put together but haven't had time to fuss over it. She wore a black blazer that was slightly too large in the shoulders, borrowed, perhaps, or purchased second-hand specifically for this day. In her right hand, she carried a clear plastic bag, the kind you'd find at a dollar store. Inside it was a stack of papers, some folded, some dog-eared at the corners, held together with a rubber band. In her left hand, a half-empty water bottle.
No briefcase, no laptop, no lavier.
Marcus watched her walk to the table on the left side of the courtroom. She set the plastic bag down carefully, as if it contained something precious. Then she pulled out a chair and sat at it. Her hands were trembling. She folded them in her lap to conceal it. On the opposite side of the courtroom, the contrast struck Marcus like cold water. A man sat at the other table, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal grey suit that looked as though it had been tailored the day before. His shoes were polished so clean they caught the fluorescent light. Beside him sat an older gentleman with silver hair swept back neatly, a grey suit, and a red tie. The kind of composure that comes from 30 years of winning in rooms exactly like this one. Marcus recognized him instantly. Lawrence Sterling, senior partner at Sterling & Associates, one of the most expensive family law firms in Houston. His hourly rate alone exceeded what most working people earned in a week. On Sterling's table sat a laptop, a thick leather binder with color-coded tabs, printed charts, and a neat row of organized folders. Everything polished. Everything designed to communicate one thing: we came prepared. We came to win. Marcus looked back at the woman, at her plastic bag, her crumpled papers, her borrowed blazer. He didn't need to read the case file to understand what he was looking at. This was a custody hearing, and it was nowhere close to a fair fight. The man in the suit never once looked at her. He leaned towards Sterling and whispered something. Sterling nodded with a small, self-assured smile. Marcus picked up his pen. Then he set it back down. He didn't need to write anything yet. He needed to watch what Judge Foster would do next. But to truly understand why this moment mattered, why everything that was about to unfold in that courtroom would cut so deeply, you need to know who this woman was, where she came from, and what she had already survived just to be standing in that room. Her name was Serena Mitchell. She was 31 years old, and her life had never once been simple. Serena grew up on the south side of Houston. Small house, chain-link fence, a two-bedroom place she shared with her mother, her younger brother Marcus, and a revolving group of cousins who needed somewhere to stay. Her father, James, was an electrician, a good man who worked hard and rarely missed a day, even when he was ill, and even then he usually pushed through. James died when Serena was 14.
A worksite accident.
Faulty wiring inside a building that should have been condemned 2 years earlier. The company issued a modest settlement, barely enough to cover the funeral and 3 months of rent. After that, Serena's mother, Dorothy, picked up a second job. Night shifts at a hospital laundry facility. She would come home at 6 in the morning, sleep until noon, then head to her day shift cleaning offices downtown. Serena watched her mother vanish into work the way some people vanish into grief, quietly, completely, without complaint. And she made herself a promise. She would never be a burden. She would carry her own weight. She graduated high school, not at the very top of her class, but close enough. She had wanted to study nursing, but there was no money for that. So she earned her CNA certification instead. Certified Nursing Assistant. 8 weeks of training, and it secured her a position at Sunrise Senior Care on the east side of the city. The pay was $17.25 an hour. Not much, but it was steady. And Serena loved the work. She loved the residents. She loved being the person who showed up when someone needed help getting out of bed, or finishing lunch, or simply having someone to talk to. She was 23 when she met Trevor. He was 25, selling vehicles at a dealership off Westheimer Road, charming, quick-witted, the kind of man who could make you feel like the only person in a room. They married after a year of dating. Small ceremony. Dorothy cried through the entire thing. Good tears. A year later, Zoe was born. 6 pounds, 4 ounces. Dark brown eyes just like her mother's. And the moment Serena held her daughter for the first time, something inside her was permanently rewired. She'd loved before, her mother, her brother. But this was something different. This was the kind of love that restructured everything. Every decision she made from that point forward had Zoe at the center. For 2 years, things were good. Not perfect, but good. They had a modest apartment. Trevor was working his way up at the dealership. Serena kept her shifts at Sunrise Senior Care. Then Trevor got promoted, then promoted again, then opened his own dealership with backing from a business partner. Suddenly there was more money, a bigger apartment, new clothes, a lease car that smelled like leather. But the more Trevor acquired, the less he seemed to see Serena. He started coming home late, making excuses, picking fights over nothing. He told her once, after a dinner party where she'd felt out of place among his new circle, that she needed to evolve, that she was still the same girl from the South Side, that he had moved up and she hadn't. Here is something most people don't realize. In family court, you are not guaranteed a lawyer. Not like in criminal court, where the state will appoint one for you. In family court, if you cannot afford an attorney, you are on your own. And roughly 70 to 80% of custody cases in this country have at least one side representing themselves, not because they want to, but because they have no other choice. Serena was one of those people. She had hired a lawyer once, paid for it by selling her car, a 2006 Toyota Camry with 145,000 miles on it. She had gotten $3,200 for it. The lawyer took $2,500 as a retainer, filed some paperwork, submitted some motions. Then the money ran out, and so did he. He dropped the case with a polite email and a referral to legal aid that had a 6-month waiting list. So Serena stood in that courtroom alone, with her plastic bag of documents, her borrowed blazer, and her half-empty water bottle, facing a man who had an attorney billing $800 an hour. She didn't know it yet, but the system she was about to face had never been designed for people like her. Lawrence Sterling rose from his chair with the ease of a man who had done this 1,000 times, and he had. He buttoned his jacket with one hand, adjusted his cufflinks with the other, and addressed the court with the calm that only comes from knowing you have already won. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Trevor Mitchell, is a successful entrepreneur. He operates a thriving automobile dealership here in Houston. His annual income exceeds $240,000. He owns a 4-bedroom home in a safe, well-rated school district. He has the financial stability, the living space, and the resources to provide his daughter with the finest possible upbringing. Foster was nodding, not subtly, but openly, like a man listening to music he thoroughly enjoyed. Sterling continued presenting financial records, tax returns, a home inspection report, and character references from 6 individuals, including a pastor, a school board member, and a licensed family therapist who had evaluated Trevor and deemed him a capable and devoted father. He paused. Let the words settle. We respectfully ask the court to grant primary custody to Mr. Mitchell, with supervised visitation for the respondent. Supervised visitation. Marcus underlined those 2 words in his notebook. That was aggressive. Sterling wasn't just trying to win custody, he was trying to paint Serena as unfit. That required evidence, or at least the appearance of it. Your Honor, Sterling added, we believe the child's best interest is served by a stable environment. And with all due respect to Miss Mitchell, stability requires resources. Foster leaned back in his chair. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. Very thorough. He turned toward Serena. Miss Mitchell, your response. Serena stood. Her chair scraped against the floor. The sound echoed through the half-empty room like a scratch across glass. She cleared her throat. Your Honor, I have been Zoe's primary caregiver since the day she was born. I am the one who takes her to school every morning. I am the one who sits with her when she is sick. I am the one who helps her with her homework every single night. I know my income is not as high as her father's, but I provide a loving, safe home for my daughter, and I always have. Her voice was shaking, but she kept going. She had brought a letter from Zoe's first-grade teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who could confirm that she attended every parent-teacher conference, every school event, every field trip. She had also brought a letter from their pediatrician showing that Zoe was healthy, current on all vaccinations, and that she had never missed a single appointment. She reached into the plastic bag, pulled out 2 sheets of paper, and began walking toward the bench. Foster held up a hand. Are these notarized, Miss Mitchell? Serena stopped. I am sorry. These letters, are they notarized? Do they carry official certification? No, Your Honor. They're just letters, from her teacher and her doctor. Foster shook his head slowly. I cannot accept unverified documents as evidence, Miss Mitchell. You need to understand that this is a court of law. There are procedures. Marcus's pen stopped moving. He looked at the stack of documents on Sterling's table, the character references that had just been accepted without question. 6 of them. Marcus was willing to wager everything he owned that at least half of those were simple typed letters as well. Not notarized, not certified, just signed on letterhead. And Foster hadn't questioned a single one. Serena looked lost. But Your Honor, these are from professionals who know my daughter. They can speak to the kind of mother I am. Miss Mitchell, I need facts. I need documentation. I don't need emotional appeals. Let's move on. Do you have anything else? The way he said emotional appeals, as though a mother's love for her child was an inconvenience, as though a woman fighting to keep her daughter was wasting his time. Serena tried again. She spoke about Zoe's bedtime routine, about how Zoe still slept with a stuffed elephant that Serena had bought her when she was 2, about how Zoe cried every time she had to go to her father's house because she wanted to stay with Mommy. Foster cut her off. Miss Mitchell, I'm going to ask you to stick to the relevant facts. The court's time is limited. Marcus glanced at the clock. Sterling had spoken for 14 minutes. Serena had been given less than 6, and had been interrupted 3 times. That's when Marcus saw it. The pattern, clear as sunlight. Foster wasn't just biased. He was wielding procedure as a weapon. Every rule he applied to Serena, he had waived for Sterling. Every standard he demanded from her, he had overlooked on the other side. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. And it was invisible to anyone who didn't know what to look for. Serena's voice cracked. Your Honor, I am a good mother. My daughter needs me. Please. Foster glanced at his watch. Then he turned back to his papers. Marcus sat perfectly still, but inside him a storm was rising. Foster shuffled his documents for a moment. Then he looked up. Having reviewed the evidence presented by both parties and considered the financial stability, living arrangements, and overall capacity of each parent to provide for the minor child, this court finds it to be in the best interest of the child, Zoe Mitchell, to grant primary physical and legal custody to the petitioner, Trevor Mitchell. He delivered it the way a person reads a grocery list. No hesitation, no pause, just words in a sequence. The respondent, Serena Mitchell, shall be granted supervised visitation twice per month at a court-approved facility, pending a formal evaluation. Supervised visitation. Twice a month. At a facility. As if she were dangerous. As if she were someone her own daughter needed to be shielded from. The gavel came down, one sharp crack that split the room in 2. Serena didn't move. She stood behind her table with her palms flat on the surface, as though the wood was the only thing keeping her upright. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The papers she had been holding slipped from her fingers and drifted to the floor like leaves from a dying tree. Across the aisle, Trevor leaned toward Sterling. They shook hands, a small, quiet handshake. The kind men exchange when a deal closes. Trevor didn't smile exactly, but something crossed his face. Satisfaction, maybe. He still did not look at Serena. The court clerk called for the next case, just like that, as if a family hadn't just been ripped apart 30 seconds ago. Serena gathered her papers from the floor. Her hands were trembling so badly she dropped them twice before getting them all. She put them back in the plastic bag, picked up her half-empty water bottle, and walked out of the courtroom like a woman moving through a dream she couldn't escape. In the hallway, Zoe was sitting on a wooden bench, swinging her legs. A court aide sat beside her, scrolling through a phone. When Zoe spotted her mother, she jumped down and ran. Mommy, can we go home now? Serena dropped to her knees on the cold tile floor. She wrapped both arms around her daughter and held on as if the world were trying to pull Zoe away from her, because it was. She couldn't speak. She pressed her face against Zoe's hair, eyes closed, breathing in the scent of her daughter's shampoo. Strawberry. The inexpensive kind from the dollar store that Zoe loved because it came in a pink bottle. Mommy, are you okay? I'm okay, baby, Serena whispered. But her voice broke on the last word, and the tears finally came. Not the quiet tears from the courtroom, but something deeper. The sound of something inside her breaking apart. Marcus stood in the doorway. He had watched the entire thing, the verdict, the handshake, the papers on the floor, and now this. A mother on her knees in a courthouse hallway, holding her daughter, knowing she was about to lose her. He stood there longer than he should have, because he wasn't seeing Serena anymore. He was seeing someone else. Someone from a very long time ago. Marcus closed his notebook. He walked past Serena and Zoe without a word, down the corridor, through the security checkpoint, out the front doors of the Harris County Courthouse and into the warm September air. But he didn't go to the car. He stopped on the courthouse steps, pulled out his phone, and made a call. Now, to understand why that phone call mattered so much, why Marcus didn't simply file a complaint and go home, you need to know something about him that very few people knew. Something he carried with him every single day like a stone in his chest. Marcus Holt was 62 years old. Self-made. He had built Holt Capital Partners from nothing. Not from a small loan, not from family money. From absolutely nothing. He grew up in Beaumont, Texas, in a small brick house on a street where every yard had a chain-link fence and every front porch had a plastic chair. His mother, Ruth, was an elementary school teacher, 4th grade, 31 years at the same campus. She earned just enough to keep the lights on and food in the kitchen. His father left when Marcus was 7. No note, no explanation. Just gone one morning, like smoke through a window screen. Ruth raised Marcus and his older sister Yvette on her own. She taught summer school for extra income. She tutored neighborhood children on weekends. She never complained. Not once. Marcus used to watch her grade papers at the kitchen table at midnight and think, one day I'm going to earn enough money so she never has to work this hard again. He did. But that's not the part of this story that matters most. The part that matters is what happened to Yvette. Yvette was 4 years older than Marcus. Brilliant, warm, the kind of woman who could make a room feel lighter just by stepping into it. She married a man named Clyde when she was 23. Clyde seemed decent at first, polite, church-going, had a steady warehouse job. They had a daughter, Brianna, born on a rainy Tuesday in March. Yvette adored that child above everything. But Clyde changed the way some people do when they decide they own something. He began controlling the finances. He questioned where Yvette went and who she saw. He raised his voice. Then his hands. Yvette filed for divorce when Brianna was 5. She had no savings. Clyde had drained their joint account. She couldn't afford a lawyer. She went to legal aid, but the waiting list was 4 months long. Clyde hired an attorney, not expensive, but experienced. And when the custody hearing came, the judge looked at Clyde's steady employment, his clean record, and his attorney's polished arguments, and at Yvette standing alone with a folder full of crumpled papers, trying to explain why she deserved to keep her own child. The judge awarded primary custody to Clyde. Yvette fell apart, slowly at first, then all at once. She stopped eating, stopped leaving the house, lost a job. Marcus tried to help, but he was 22 years old, working as a junior associate at a real estate office, barely covering his own rent. He didn't have the money to hire a lawyer. He didn't have the connections to fight the system. He didn't have the power to do anything except watch his sister disappear. 3 years later, Yvette died. The official cause was heart failure complicated by severe depression. But Marcus knew the truth. The system had taken her daughter. And without Brianna, Yvette had no reason to keep going. Clyde eventually remarried. His new wife had no desire for another woman's child around. Brianna ended up in foster care by the time she was 9, placed in 3 different homes over 2 years. Marcus tried to gain custody, but by then he was just starting his company, working 80-hour weeks. The court deemed him unsuitable. Every year in the United States, over 400,000 children live in the foster care system. Many of them are not there because their parents are bad people. They are there because the system decided that poverty and neglect were the same thing. That not having money meant not having love. And once a child enters that system, the odds of them emerging whole are devastatingly low. Marcus eventually lost track of Brianna for years. By the time he found her again, she was 19, living in a group home, quiet and guarded. The warmth that Yvette had instilled in her was still there, buried deep, but it had been layered over by years of being passed from one place to another like something no one truly wanted to keep. Marcus built his fortune after that. He built it fast, and he built it deliberately, not because he loved money, but because he understood something most people never fully grasp. In this country, power is the only thing that protects the people you love. And he had been powerless once. He swore he would never be powerless again. When he joined the State Commission on Judicial Conduct, his colleagues assumed it was a vanity appointment, a wealthy man's hobby, something to add to a biography. They were wrong. Marcus joined because every time he sat in a courtroom and watched a mother get crushed by a system that was supposed to protect her, he saw Yvette. He couldn't save his sister. But standing over her grave on a cold December morning, he made a promise that he would spend the rest of his life making sure what happened to her didn't happen to anyone else. Not if he could stop it. And today, standing on the courthouse steps with his phone in his hand, watching a woman named Serena Mitchell collapse to her knees in a hallway, he knew exactly what he had to do. Marcus climbed into the backseat of the Bentley. Thomas set down the newspaper and started the engine without a word. He had worked for Marcus long enough to recognize when his employer needed silence. Marcus dialed. Diana answered on the second ring, her voice sharp and efficient, the way it always was. "Diana, I need something, and I need it quickly." "Of course. What do you need?" "I need every ruling Judge Raymond Foster has issued in Harris County Family Court over the past 5 years. Every custody case, every visitation order, especially those where one party was self-represented. I want the complete docket." A brief pause. "That's a significant request. May I ask what prompted it?" "I just watched him take a child from her mother in 45 minutes. The mother had no lawyer. The father had Sterling and Associates. The judge didn't give the woman a fair hearing. Not even close." Diana was quiet for a moment. She had worked alongside Marcus for 9 years. She knew exactly what that particular tone meant. "I'll have a preliminary report to you by Friday. I also need a background check. A woman named Serena Mitchell. She was the respondent in today's case. I need to know everything: employment, residence, character. The complete picture." "Are we looking for something specific?" "I'm looking for the truth," Marcus said simply. "I need to know if she is the kind of mother I believe she is. Because if she is, I intend to help her." Thomas drove north through the city traffic. The congested downtown streets of Houston gave way to the wide, tree-lined boulevards of River Oaks. The houses grew larger, the lawns greener, the world quieter. Marcus's home sat at the end of a long private driveway flanked by magnolia trees. It was spacious, 6 bedrooms, a library occupying the entire east wing, and a garden his late wife Catherine had planted 15 years ago that the groundskeeper still maintained exactly as she had designed it. White roses along the stone path. Lavender near the back fence. A small bench beneath a dogwood tree where Catherine used to sit and read on Sunday mornings. Catherine had been gone 8 years. Pancreatic cancer. Diagnosed in April, gone by September. 5 months. That was all the time they'd had between the doctor's words and the end. Marcus had built a life since then, a full life, but a quiet one. The house was too large for one person. He knew that. His son Damien was 34 now, living in New York, working in finance. They spoke on the phone every couple of weeks, brief calls, surface level. Damien had his mother's eyes and his father's stubbornness, and somehow those two things together had created a distance between them that neither knew how to close. That evening, Marcus sat in his study. The room was lined floor to ceiling with bookshelves. A mahogany desk dominated the center, buried under papers and folders. A framed photograph of Catherine stood in the corner. Next to it, a smaller frame, Yvette and Brianna, taken at a church picnic when Brianna was 4. Both of them smiling. Marcus opened his notebook from the courthouse. He had filled 7 pages. He went through them line by line, then took a fresh sheet and began writing. Point 1. Judge Foster allowed the petitioner's counsel to present for 14 minutes uninterrupted. The respondent was interrupted 3 times and given less than 6 minutes total. Point 2. The petitioner's character references were accepted without notarization. The respondent's evidence was rejected for lack of notarization. Point 3. No guardian ad litem was appointed for the minor child, despite the contested nature of the custody dispute. Point 4. Judge Foster did not order a home study or independent evaluation of either party. Point 5. Supervised visitation was ordered for the respondent without any documented evidence of unfitness, neglect, or endangerment. Point 6. The judge displayed visible bias through body language, including nodding during the petitioner's presentation and checking his watch during the respondent's testimony. Point 7. The overall conduct of the hearing failed to meet the standards set by the Texas Code of Judicial Conduct, Canons 1, 2, and 3. 7 violations. In a single 45-minute hearing. Marcus leaned back in his chair and stared at the list. Through the proper channels, a formal investigation into Foster could take 6 months, maybe longer. These things move slowly, deliberately slowly, because the system was designed to protect its own. But Serena Mitchell didn't have 6 months. The custody order would take effect in 30 days. After that, Zoe would be living full-time with Trevor, and Serena would be visiting her own daughter twice a month in a supervised facility, sitting across a table while a stranger watched them. Marcus knew how that story ended. He had lived it. He picked up his phone again. "Diana, one more thing." "Yes." "I need you to find me the best family law attorney in Texas who takes pro bono cases through legal aid. Someone sharp. Someone who fights. And I need a name by tomorrow morning." A pause. "Then Diana, steady as always, I'll have a name for you before sunrise." Marcus hung up. He looked at the photograph of Yvette and Brianna one more time. Then he switched off his desk lamp and sat in the dark. The formal process would take months. Serena didn't have months. She had 30 days. And Marcus Holt was not going to let those 30 days run out. The report from Diana arrived on his desk 2 days later. 12 pages, single-spaced, meticulous. Marcus poured a cup of coffee and sat down to read. Serena Denise Mitchell, age 31, born and raised in Houston, Texas. Currently employed as a certified nursing assistant at Sunrise Senior Care, a long-term residential facility. Hourly wage, $17.25. Average weekly hours, 38 to 42. No overtime available. Marcus paused on that figure. $17.25 an hour. Roughly $35,000 a year before taxes. In Houston, where a decent one-bedroom apartment ran at least $1,200 a month, he kept reading. Serena had been at Sunrise Senior Care for 7 years. Not a single disciplinary action. Not one complaint from a patient or a family member. Her supervisor's evaluation, which Diana had somehow obtained, described her as one of the most reliable and compassionate caregivers on staff. 3 separate families had written letters of gratitude to the facility specifically mentioning Serena by name. Her apartment was a one-bedroom unit in the Alief neighborhood, $785 a month. She had lived there for 3 years. Her landlord confirmed she had never been late on rent. Not once. Zoe Mitchell, age 6, enrolled in first grade at Rosa Parks Elementary. Attendance record near perfect. Only 2 absences all year, both due to a stomach virus. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had written in a progress report that Zoe was a bright, well-adjusted child with excellent social skills. And then this line, which Marcus read twice: "Her mother is one of the most dedicated parents I have worked with in 14 years of teaching." Marcus set the report down. He removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. This woman was everything the court should have safeguarded. Hard-working, devoted, present. And the system had chewed her up and discarded her in 45 minutes. Now Marcus had to figure out how to help her without alerting Foster. If the judge discovered that the chairman of the Judicial Conduct Commission was investigating him, he would cover his tracks. He would clean up his docket, call in favors, and Serena's case would disappear beneath a mountain of procedural delays that could take years to untangle. Marcus needed to move carefully, like a chess player, not a bulldozer. He picked up his phone and called a contact at the Texas Legal Aid Foundation. Not the main line, a private number. A woman named Carol Sims, who ran their family law division. Marcus had been anonymously funding their pro bono custody program for 3 years through his charitable trust. Carol knew the money came from someone with deep pockets. She had no idea it was Marcus Holt. "Carol, it's the Cornerstone Fund," Marcus said, using the name of his trust. "I have a case I'd like your team to take on. A custody matter in Harris County. The mother lost primary custody. She was self-represented. I believe there are strong grounds for appeal. Do you have a name?" Serena Mitchell. The ruling was issued last week by Judge Raymond Foster. "Send me the details. I'll assign one of our attorneys. I'd like to request someone specific, if possible. I've been told you have an attorney named Camille Rains, former partner track at a large firm, chose legal aid instead. Strong background in family court." Carol was quiet for a beat. "You've done your homework." "I always do." "I'll speak with Camille. If the case has merit, she'll take it." "It has merit," Marcus said. "Trust me." After the call, Marcus did something he hadn't planned. Something that went beyond the careful strategy mapped out in his notebook. He drove to Sunrise Senior Care, not in the Bentley. He asked Thomas to drop him 2 miles away, then drove himself in a rented sedan. A plain gray vehicle, the kind that disappears in any parking lot. He walked in alone, wearing his plain clothes. He signed in at the front desk as a visitor, writing down the name of a resident he'd found in the facility directory, an elderly woman named Agnes Monroe in room 214. He said he was a friend of the family, just stopping by. The receptionist waved him through without a second glance. Marcus walked the corridor slowly. The facility was clean but aging, linoleum floors, fluorescent lighting, the smell of disinfectant layered over something warm. Oatmeal, maybe, or soup. He found a seating area near the nurse's station, took a chair, opened a magazine, and waited. He didn't wait long. Serena came around the corner pushing a wheelchair. In it sat an elderly woman with thin white hair and bright, alert eyes. Serena was speaking to her in a low, gentle voice. "Mrs. Monroe, your daughter called this morning. She said she's coming to visit on Saturday. Isn't that wonderful?" The old woman looked up, a little confused. "My daughter?" "Yes, Sandra. She's coming Saturday afternoon." The woman's expression softened entirely. "Sandra. She has her grandmother's eyes." "She does," Serena said, smiling. "Now let's get you to the sunroom. The light is beautiful at this hour." Marcus watched from behind his magazine. He watched Serena position the wheelchair by the window and adjust the blanket across the old woman's lap. He watched her pour a cup of water and hold it steady while Mrs. Monroe drank. He watched her crouch down so they were eye level and speak to her as if she were the most important person in the world. Mrs. Monroe reached out and took Serena's hand. "You remind me of my daughter." Serena laughed softly. "Well then, I'm your daughter for today." The old woman smiled, a real smile, the kind that begins in the eyes. Marcus felt something loosen inside his chest. A tightening that had been there for 30 years was finally beginning to ease. This was not simply a good mother. This was a genuinely good person, all the way through. The kind who gave warmth to everyone she touched, even when she had nothing left to offer. Marcus stood up and walked out of the facility without speaking to anyone. Without Serena ever knowing he had been there. He climbed into the backseat of the rented sedan, and for the first time in 30 years, he felt something he had almost forgotten the shape of. Something that resembled hope. 3 days later, Serena was sitting at her kitchen table in her apartment in a leaf. The table was small, barely large enough for two, and one leg was shorter than the others, so she had folded a piece of cardboard and wedged it underneath to keep it level. Zoe was on the floor behind her, lying on her stomach with a box of crayons, drawing something on a sheet of printer paper. She was humming a song she had learned at school, something about a caterpillar. Serena wasn't humming. She was staring at a stack of envelopes, the electric bill, the water bill, the credit card she'd used to buy Zoe school supplies, and a letter from the court confirming the custody order and the timeline for the transfer of physical custody. 23 days. 23 days until Zoe would go to live with Trevor full-time. 23 days until Serena would become a visitor in her own daughter's life. She picked up the court letter and read it again. The words blurred. She had read it so many times that the sentences had stopped meaning anything, just shapes on a page. Shapes that were going to take her child away. Her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number. Normally she wouldn't answer. But something made her pick up. "Hello. Is this Serena Mitchell?" "Yes. Who's calling?" "My name is Camille Rains. I'm an attorney with the Texas Legal Aid Foundation. I'm calling about your custody case." Serena's hand tightened around the phone. "I can't afford a lawyer. I already tried that. He dropped me when the money ran out." "I understand, and I'm truly sorry that happened. But this is different. Our program is fully funded through a private grant. You would not pay a single cent, not for my time, not for filing fees, not for anything." Serena was silent. She had been burned before. Promises that sounded too good. Help that evaporated when things got difficult. "Why me?" she finally asked. "How did you even get my name?" "Your case was flagged through our review process. We examine recent family court rulings, and yours raised serious concerns. I've looked at the docket, Serena, and I believe there are strong grounds for an appeal." Serena closed her eyes. Behind her, she could hear Zoe humming. The caterpillar song. What kind of grounds? Procedural errors, possible judicial bias, failure to appoint a guardian ad litem for your daughter. There are at least 4 issues I can identify from the initial review alone, and I'd like to look deeper. Serena's throat tightened. She wanted to believe this. She wanted it so desperately it hurt. Miss Raines, the last lawyer I had took $2,500 from me and then sent me an email saying he couldn't continue. I sold my car to pay him. I don't have anything left to sell. Camille's voice was steady and warm, the voice of someone who had heard this story before and had decided long ago to do something about it. Serena, I hear you. And I want you to know something. I walked away from a 6-figure position at a private firm to do this work. I'm not here because anyone told me to be. I'm here because I chose to be. I don't abandon clients, and I don't lose cases I believe in. Silence. Serena opened her eyes and looked at Zoe on the floor. The drawing was taking shape now, a house with a triangle roof. 2 stick figures standing in front of it, one tall and one small, holding hands. Okay, Serena said quietly. Okay. I'll do it. They talked for another 15 minutes. Camille walked her through the process. She would need to review the full court transcript, the evidence from both sides, and the judge's written findings. She would file a motion for reconsideration within 2 weeks. If that was denied, they would go to appellate court. After they hung up, Serena sat there for a long time. Then the tears came, not the dark, heavy tears from the courthouse. Those had felt like stones in her chest. These were different. Lighter. Warmer. Like rain after a long drought. Mommy, are you okay? Zoe looked up from her drawing. I'm okay, baby. Serena wiped her eyes and smiled. Better than okay. That night, after Zoe was asleep, Serena called her mother. Mommy, someone phoned me today. A lawyer. She says she can help me fight the ruling and it won't cost me anything. Dorothy was quiet on the other end. Then she said carefully, who's paying for it? Some kind of grant? A private fund? I don't know the details. Meja, be careful. Nothing in this world comes free. I know, Mommy. But she sounded real. She sounded like she actually cares. Dorothy sighed, a long, tired sigh that carried years of worry inside it. God works in mysterious ways, baby. Maybe this is one of them. Serena smiled. Maybe. She hung up and looked at Zoe's drawing on the refrigerator, the house with the triangle roof, the 2 stick figures holding hands. Serena didn't know that God wasn't the only one working on her behalf. The following Friday, Diana walked into Marcus's study carrying a thick manila envelope. She placed it on his desk without a word and sat down in the leather chair across from him. Marcus opened it. Inside was the complete report on Judge Raymond Foster's rulings over the past 5 years. The numbers were damning. In that period, Foster had presided over 93 custody cases. In 72 of them, at least one party was self-represented. And in 78% of those cases, Foster had ruled in favor of the side with private legal counsel, regardless of the evidence. Marcus read that figure again. 78%. That wasn't a preference. That was a pattern. But it got worse. Diana leaned forward. I had our research team cross-reference Foster's rulings with the law firms involved. One name kept coming up. Sterling and Associates. Lawrence Sterling has appeared before Foster 26 times in 5 years. He won 24 of those cases, a 92% win rate. The average win rate for family law attorneys in Harris County is around 55%. Marcus stared at the page. 24 out of 26. That wasn't skill. That was something else. There's more, Diana said. Foster and Sterling are both members of the Lakeview Golf Club in Sugar Land. It's a private club. Annual membership, $42,000. I pulled the records. They've been co-members for 7 years. They've played together at least twice a month for the past 3 years. Their lockers are side by side. Marcus sat back in his chair. This was not bribery, not in the legal sense. There was no envelope of cash, no wire transfer, nothing a prosecutor could point to in court. But it was a conflict of interest so glaring that it practically glowed in the dark. Here is what most people don't realize about family court. Unlike criminal proceedings, there is no jury, no 12 citizens watching the hearing and keeping the judge accountable. It's one person on the bench making decisions that determine where children sleep at night. And unlike criminal court, family court almost never draws media attention. No reporters in the gallery, no cameras, no public scrutiny. Which means a judge in family court has more unchecked authority than nearly any other figure in the legal system, and far less accountability. Marcus had known this for years. It was the reason he had joined the commission in the first place. But seeing it laid out in black and white, case after case, family after family, the weight of it pressed down on him. Diana continued, I also found 12 cases where foster awarded custody to the wealthier parent despite documented concerns from teachers, social workers, or pediatricians about the home environment. In 3 of those cases, the children were later reported to Child Protective Services for neglect or abuse in the custodial home. 3 children placed in homes the court chose. Homes that harmed them. Marcus closed the folder. He looked at the photograph of a vet on his desk. Then he picked up his phone. He called Camille Rains, but he didn't use his own name. He used the name of his charitable trust. Miss Rains. This is the Cornerstone Fund. I understand you've taken on the Mitchell case. I have, Camille said. And I should let you know, I've already identified significant issues with the ruling. I'm confident we have grounds for a motion to reconsider. Good. I want you to know that whatever resources you require, they are available. If you need an independent child psychologist to evaluate Zoe, we'll cover it. If you need expert witnesses, we'll cover that as well. Financial records, deposition costs, whatever it takes. A pause. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why this case? We have dozens of mothers in the same situation. Marcus looked at the folder on his desk, at the numbers, the names, the pattern that had been hiding in plain sight for 5 years. Because this case isn't just about one mother, he said. It's about a judge who has been doing this for a very long time. And this is the case that's going to stop him. Camille was quiet for a moment. Then she said simply, Good. Marcus hung up. He spread the pages across his desk. 93 cases. 72 with a self-represented parent. 78% ruled against them. 3 children harmed. 1 judge who had never once been questioned. The formal investigation through the commission would take months. But Prescott Foster had been playing his own game far too long, and no one had ever dared challenge him. Until now. Camille Rains arrived at Serena's apartment on a Wednesday evening. She had called ahead, but Serena still appeared surprised when she opened the door, as though she wasn't quite used to people actually showing up when they said they would.
Come in.
Sorry about the mess. There was no mess. The apartment was small but immaculate, a 1-bedroom unit with a kitchen that doubled as a dining room, and a living room that served as Zoe's play space. The couch had a fitted sheet draped over it because the fabric underneath had worn through. The kitchen table had a folded piece of cardboard wedged under one leg. But everything was spotless. Everything was in its place. Zoe was sitting on the floor near the window, coloring. When she saw Camille, she stood up and walked over with the unshakable confidence that only 6-year-olds possess. Are you the lady who's helping my mommy? Camille crouched down. I am. My name is Camille. Zoe ran to her pile of drawings and returned holding a sheet of paper, extending it with both hands like it was a diploma. Camille took it. It was a crayon drawing, 2 stick figures, 1 tall with curly hair, 1 shorter holding a briefcase. Between them, in wobbly letters, a lady who helps mommy. Camille stared at that drawing for a long moment. Then she looked up at Serena, and something passed between them, an understanding. This wasn't about paperwork or legal strategy. This was about a little girl who wanted to go home. Thank you, Zoe. I love it. Camille folded the drawing carefully and placed it in her bag. After Zoe went back to coloring, the 2 women sat at the kitchen table. Camille opened her laptop and spread out a thin folder. Okay, Serena, here is where we stand. To challenge the ruling, we are going to file what's called a motion for reconsideration. That means we are asking the court to take another look at the decision, but we can't simply say it was unfair. We have to demonstrate specific legal errors. What kind of errors? I've already found 4. Camille held up a finger for each one. First, the judge gave you significantly less time to present your case than the other side. The court transcript shows the opposing attorney spoke for 14 minutes. You received less than 6, and you were interrupted 3 times. That's a due process concern. I didn't know I could even count the minutes. Most people don't. That's exactly the point. Camille continued. Second, the judge rejected your evidence, specifically the letters from Zoe's teacher and doctor, because they weren't notarized. But the other side submitted 6 character references in the exact same format, none notarized, and the judge accepted every single one. That's an unequal application of procedural standards. Serena's eyes widened. I knew that felt wrong. I just didn't know what to call it. Now you do. Third, the judge failed to consider independent assessments of Zoe's well-being, her school records, her medical history, her teacher's evaluation. All of it was ignored. And fourth, and this one is significant, no guardian ad litem was appointed for Zoe. What's that? A guardian ad litem is a person the court appoints to represent the child's interests, not the mother's, not the father's, the child's. In a contested custody case involving a minor this young, many jurisdictions require one. The fact that Foster didn't appoint one is a serious procedural failure. Serena sat back and stared at the table for a long moment. Then she looked up. Why didn't anyone tell me this before? At the hearing, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know I could object. I didn't know I could ask for more time. I didn't understand any of the rules. Camille met her eyes steadily. Because the system isn't designed to help you understand it, Serena. It's designed to keep moving. And when one side has a lawyer who knows the rules and the other doesn't, the system doesn't slow down to explain. It just keeps going. Serena was quiet. Then she said something Camille didn't expect. Teach me. Teach you. Teach me the rules. I want to understand what happened to me. Not just so we can win, but so I never walk into a courtroom blind again. For the first time since she had taken the case, Camille smiled. They worked for 3 hours that evening. Camille walked Serena through the basics of family court procedure, what a motion looks like, what a legal brief contains, how evidence is submitted and challenged. Serena took notes in a spiral notebook with a pen that kept running dry, so she'd shake it and keep going. After Camille left, Serena put Zoe to bed, read her a story, kissed her forehead, and turned off a light. Then she went back to the kitchen table and kept working. She wrote letters to Zoe's teacher requesting a formal written statement. She called the pediatrician's office and left a message asking for certified copies of Zoe's medical records. She texted 2 neighbors who had known her since Zoe was born and asked if they'd be willing to provide written character references. She worked until 1 in the morning. Her eyes burned. Her back ached from the hard wooden chair. But for the first time in her life, Serena wasn't simply praying for a miracle. She was building one with her own hands. That Saturday, Marcus drove to the Alif neighborhood, not in the Bentley. He had Thomas drop him 2 miles away and drove himself in the rented sedan. There was a community fair happening at the recreation center off Washington Road. A small one, the kind of gathering only locals knew about. A few tents selling plates of food, a DJ playing gospel and old-school R&B from a folding table, children running around with popsicles, and a bounce house that leaned slightly to the left. Marcus had funded this event through his charitable trust, as he had done for years, anonymously, never attending, never putting his name on anything. Today was different. He wore jeans, a plain white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no watch. He bought a plate of barbecue from a woman at the first tent and sat on a bench near the playground, eating quietly. He spotted Serena after about 20 minutes. She was walking across the grass with Zoe holding her hand. Zoe wore a yellow dress with white flowers and had her hair in 2 puffs with ribbons. She was bouncing with every step, tugging her mother toward the bounce house. Serena looked exhausted, but she was smiling, the kind of smile that takes real effort when your world is unraveling, but you put it on anyway because your child is watching. Marcus watched them for a while. Then Zoe broke free and sprinted toward the bounce house at full speed, head down, arms pumping, and crashed directly into Marcus's legs. His plate tilted. The lemonade he had set on the bench sloshed across his shoes. Zoe looked up at him with enormous eyes. Oh. Serena was right behind her. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. Zoe, what did I tell you about running without looking? Marcus glanced down at his damp shoes. Then he looked at Zoe and grinned. You know what? These shoes needed watering anyway. They were looking a little dry. Zoe giggled. You can't water shoes. They're not plants. Are you certain? I think I can see them growing already. He wiggled his foot. Zoe laughed harder. Serena relaxed. She has a lot of energy today. I really am sorry about your shoes. Don't be. Marcus extended his hand.
I'm Marcus.
Just here enjoying the fair. Serena. And this little tornado is Zoe. They talked, easy conversation, the kind that happens between strangers at a cookout when neither person has anywhere else to be. Marcus asked about Zoe, how old she was, what grade she was in. Serena talked about her daughter the way she always did, with her whole face lit up, eyes bright, voice full of pride. She's in first grade. She loves to read. She tells everyone she's going to be a veterinarian because she wants to help animals that are frightened. Marcus smiled. That's a wonderful dream. He asked what Serena did for work. She told him about Sunrise Senior Care, about the residents she cared for, about how deeply she loved the work even on the hardest days. The elderly deserve dignity, she said simply. Just because they're older doesn't mean they stop mattering. Marcus felt something pull in his chest. He thought of his mother, Ruth, 31 years in the same classroom, never wavering. They talked a while longer. Serena never mentioned the custody case. She didn't bring up the court, or Trevor, or any of it. But Marcus saw the shadow cross her face when Zoe ran back over and tugged her hand. Mommy, when can I come home for real? The question floated in the air like a held breath. Serena's smile didn't break, but something behind her eyes did. Soon, baby. Mommy's working on it. Zoe nodded and ran off again. Serena watched her go. She's a remarkable child, Marcus said quietly. Whoever raised her must be a remarkable person. Serena turned to look at him. Her eyes were glassy. Thank you. That means more than you know. Marcus said his goodbye shortly after. He walked back to the rented car. Sat in the driver's seat. Did not start the engine. He sat there for a long time, not thinking about legal strategy or commission hearings or judicial conduct codes. He was thinking about a little girl in a yellow dress who wanted to go home, and a mother who was breaking apart on the inside, but still smiled because her daughter needed to see her standing strong. This was no longer just a case. This wasn't just a corrupt judge or a broken system. This was a family, small, fragile, held together by one woman's love and two hands that refused to let go. And Marcus was going to make sure those hands did not have to hold on alone. 2 weeks before the hearing, Camille called. Marcus, we have a problem. He set down his coffee. The motion for reconsideration goes back to the same judge. Foster gets to hear his own case again. Marcus was silent. That's how it works at this level. Before we can go to appellate court, we have to give the original judge an opportunity to correct his own ruling. And we both know he's not going to admit he was wrong. Marcus leaned back in his chair. He had known this since the beginning. The system was constructed this way. A judge's first chance to fix his mistake was also his best opportunity to bury it. File the best motion you've ever written, Marcus said. Make it bulletproof. Cite every rule, every precedent, every standard he violated. Make the record so thorough that if he denies it, the appeals court will have no choice but to overturn him. And if he still denies it, I'll make sure he is not sitting on that bench much longer. A pause. Who are you? I'm the person making sure this mother gets a fair hearing. That's all you need to know right now. Fair enough. That evening, Marcus convened an emergency session of the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. He presented everything: the 5-year data, the pattern of rulings, the relationship between Foster and Sterling through the golf club, the 12 cases where custody had gone to the wealthier parent despite evidence suggesting the other home was more suitable, the 3 children who subsequently ended up in protective services. The room was very quiet when he finished. The commission voted unanimously. A formal investigation into Judge Raymond Foster would begin immediately. An official notice would be hand-delivered to Foster's chambers within 48 hours. That night, Serena sat on the edge of Zoe's bed at Trevor's house, on video call. The screen was small. The connection kept buffering. But Zoe's face filled the frame, and for Serena, that was enough. Mommy, are you coming to get me soon? I'm working on it, baby. I promise. Mommy is fighting for you. I'm not going to stop. Zoe was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I know, Mommy. You're the bravest person I know. Serena pressed her hand against the screen. She could not feel her daughter's face, but she held it there anyway. After the call, she sat alone in her apartment. The motion was filed. The evidence was gathered. Camille had prepared everything. There was nothing left to do but wait and pray. But somewhere across the city, in a study lined with books and old photographs, a man was making absolutely certain that prayer would not be the only protection Serena Mitchell had come mourning. The morning of the reconsideration hearing, the air inside courtroom C felt different. Heavier, as if the room itself sensed what was approaching. Serena sat at the same table she had occupied before. Same side, same chair. But this time, Camille Raines sat beside her, and the difference was visible from across the room. Camille wore a tailored black suit. Her files were organized in a leather binder with color-coded tabs. She had a laptop open with the court transcript from the original hearing loaded on screen, key passages highlighted in yellow. She sat with her spine straight and her hands folded, composed, prepared. Across the aisle, Sterling looked over. He had expected to see Serena alone again. When he noticed Camille, his expression shifted, just for a fraction of a second. A flicker of something. Surprise, perhaps. Or the first small crack of uncertainty. Trevor sat beside his attorney. He glanced at Serena, then at Camille, then back at Sterling. He leaned over and whispered something. Sterling waved him off. Judge Foster entered. The bailiff called the court to order. Foster settled into his chair, adjusted his glasses, and opened the case file. This is the matter of Mitchell versus Mitchell. We are here on a motion for reconsideration filed by the respondent. Counsel, you may proceed. Camille stood. Thank you, Your Honor. The respondent respectfully requests that this court reconsider its custody ruling on the basis of 4 specific procedural and substantive errors. She did not rush. She did not raise her voice. She laid it out piece by piece, like a surgeon making precise incisions. First, the original hearing provided the respondent less than 6 minutes of uninterrupted presentation time, compared to 14 minutes for the petitioner's counsel. The due process clause requires that both parties receive a genuine opportunity to be heard. The record shows Miss Mitchell was interrupted 3 times. Mr. Sterling was not interrupted once. Foster shifted in his seat. Second, the court rejected the respondent's documentary evidence, specifically letters from a child's teacher and pediatrician, on the grounds that they lacked notarization. However, the petitioner submitted 6 character references in identical format, none notarized, and the court accepted every one of them without objection. That is an unequal application of procedural standards. Sterling rose. Your Honor, this is a delay tactic. The original ruling was thorough and well considered. Camille did not flinch. Your Honor, with respect, the record speaks for itself. I am citing the court's own transcript. Continue, Miss Raines, Foster said tightly. Third, the court did not consider independent assessments of the child's well-being, including school performance records and pediatric evaluations, all of which demonstrate that the child is flourishing under the respondent's care. And fourth, and this carries considerable weight, no guardian ad litem was appointed to represent the interests of the minor child, despite the contested nature of this proceeding. She paused. Let the silence do the work. A mother fighting for her child is not a tactic, Your Honor. It is a right. Sterling opened his mouth to respond. But before he could speak, the courtroom door opened. Every head turned. Marcus Holt walked in. He wore a charcoal grey suit, white shirt, no tie. He moved slowly, deliberately, the way a man walks when he wants every step to be noticed. He did not look at Serena. He did not look at Camille. He did not look at Sterling. He looked directly at Judge Raymond Foster. And he took a seat in the front row. Foster's face changed. Not dramatically, not the way it happens in films. It was far subtler than that. The color drained from his cheeks like water from a cracked glass. His hands, which had been resting flat on the bench, curled slightly. His jaw tightened. He knew that face. Every judge in Texas knew that face. Marcus Holt, chairman of the Texas Commission on Judicial Conduct, the man who held the authority to investigate, discipline, and recommend the removal of any judge in the state. And he was sitting 6 feet away, watching. Foster cleared his throat. I think this might be a good time for a brief recess. Camille glanced over at Marcus. She didn't know who he was, but she knew what fear looked like on a judge's face, and right now, Raymond Foster was afraid. Serena looked at the man in the front row. She had never seen him before in her life. But she saw the way the judge responded to his presence. The way the entire room seemed to tilt when he walked in, as though the balance of gravity itself had shifted. "Who is that?" she whispered to Camille. "I don't know," Camille murmured back. "But whoever he is, the judge knows him. And the judge is scared." Serena looked at Marcus one more time. He sat perfectly still, hands on his knees, watching the bench. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know what he had done for her. She didn't know about the investigation, the funding, the commission vote, the phone calls, or the report. But the viewers knew. They had known since the beginning. And the game was almost over. Foster returned from the recess looking like a man who had aged 10 years in 15 minutes. He sat down, shuffled his papers, and cleared his throat twice before speaking. "After careful consideration, this court will take the motion for reconsideration under advisement. A ruling will be issued within 14 days. That was it. No decision.
No explanation.
Just a delay. Camille leaned towards Serena and whispered, "That means he's stalling." He knows he cannot deny the motion with Marcus Holt sitting right there watching him. But he can't grant it either without admitting he was wrong. "What happens now?" Serena whispered, "We wait. But I don't think it will be long." She was right. 4 days later, Judge Raymond Foster received a hand-delivered letter from the Texas Commission on Judicial Conduct. The letter informed him that a formal investigation had been opened into his conduct on the bench. Effective immediately, he was suspended from all judicial duties pending the outcome of the inquiry. The news moved through the Harris County Courthouse like wildfire. Foster had served on that bench for 11 years. He had never been questioned, never been challenged. And now he was sitting at home, locked out of his own chambers, while a team of investigators methodically reviewed 5 years of his rulings. Serena's case was reassigned to Judge Angela Moore, a 22-year veteran of the Texas bench, known for being thorough, fair, and patient. The kind of judge who read every page of every file and asked questions until she fully understood the situation. Judge Moore reviewed the entire record, the original hearing transcript, Camille's motion, the evidence Serena had gathered, the certified letters from Zoe's teacher and pediatrician, statements from neighbors, and the child psychologist evaluation that Marcus's trust had funded, which described Zoe as deeply bonded to her mother and showing signs of emotional distress from a separation. She also reviewed Trevor's side, his income, his home, his attorney's arguments. Then she issued her ruling. The phone rang on a Thursday afternoon. Serena was at the kitchen table helping Zoe with a worksheet she had brought home from school. Zoe was practicing writing the letter Z, over and over in wobbly pencil strokes. Serena picked up. "Hello, Serena. It's Camille." Something in her voice made Serena stand up immediately. She walked to the hallway where Zoe couldn't hear. "What happened?" "Judge Moore issued her ruling this morning." Camille paused. "Zoe is coming home, Serena. Primary custody, you." Silence. A long, full silence. The kind that holds everything in it. Every sleepless night, every tear cried in a courthouse hallway, every time Zoe had asked when she could come home for real. Then Serena made a sound. Not a word. Just a sound. Something between a gasp and a sob. The sound a person makes when a weight they have been carrying for so long finally lifts, and they don't know what to do with all that sudden lightness. "Are you okay?" Camille asked. "Thank you." Serena was crying now, not the dark, heavy tears from before. These were warm. These were relief pouring out of every part of her. "Thank you. Thank you. You did this, Serena. You fought for it. I just helped you navigate the system." After they hung up, Serena slid down the wall and sat on the hallway floor. She pressed both hands over her face and wept until there was nothing left. Then she wiped her eyes, stood up, and walked back to the kitchen. Zoe looked up from her worksheet. "Mommy, your eyes are red." "I know, baby." "Are you sad?" Serena knelt down and pulled her daughter into her arms. "No, baby. I'm happy. You're coming home. For real this time." Zoe pulled back and looked into her mother's face, searching for the truth. "For real. For real." Zoe threw both arms around Serena's neck and squeezed with everything she had. Serena closed her eyes and held her daughter tight and felt the world put itself back together, one piece at a time. Across the city, In a study lined with books and old photographs, Marcus sat alone. Diana had called him with the news an hour earlier. He had thanked her and hung up. Now he sat in his leather chair, looking out the window at Catherine's garden. The white roses were in bloom. The lavender was tall. The bench beneath the dogwood tree was empty the way it always was. He looked at the photograph of Yvette on his desk. Yvette and Brianna at the church picnic, both of them smiling. "I couldn't save you," he said quietly. "But I saved her." The room was silent. In the weeks that followed, the investigation into Judge Foster expanded. The commission uncovered 15 additional cases with patterns of bias mirroring Serena's. Families torn apart by rulings that favored wealth over evidence. Children placed in homes that harmed them because a judge had decided that money and love were the same thing. Foster was formally removed from the bench. His law license was suspended pending a separate inquiry by the State Bar of Texas. Lawrence Sterling, his golf partner and frequent courtroom collaborator, was placed under review by the bar for potential ethical violations. 2 weeks after the ruling, Marcus drove to a Leaf. This time, he took the Bentley. This time, he wore a suit. He parked on the street outside Serena's apartment building, walked up the stairs, and knocked on the door. Serena opened it. Her face lit up for a moment before confusion settled in. "Cal, wait, what are you doing here? How do you know where I live?" Marcus took a breath. "Serena, my name isn't Cal. My name is Marcus Holt, and I need to tell you something." Serena's smile faded. She stepped back, but she did not close the door.
"Come in."
They sat at the kitchen table, the same table with the cardboard wedged under the leg. Zoe was in the other room drawing. Marcus could hear her humming. He started from the beginning. He told Serena about sitting in the back row of courtrooms see the day she lost custody. He told her about the notebook, about Diana, about the investigation into Foster that had been underway long before he ever saw her face. He told her about the Cornerstone Fund, about how he had arranged for Camille to take her case, about the child psychologist, the expert witnesses, the resources that had appeared out of nowhere when she needed them most. And then he told her about Yvette. His voice changed when he got to that part. The steadiness cracked, just slightly, like a fracture in a dam that had held for 30 years. "My sister lost her daughter the same way you almost lost Zoe. A judge who didn't care. A system that wasn't built for people like her. She never recovered. She died 3 years later. And her daughter, my niece, ended up in foster care. I was 22 years old. I had nothing. No money, no power, no way to help." He stopped, swallowed hard. "I made a promise standing over Yvette's grave that I would spend the rest of my life making sure what happened to her didn't happen to anyone else. That's why I was in that courtroom. That's why I helped you." Serena was very still. Her face moved through so many emotions it was difficult to read. Shock, confusion, something that looked like anger. "You interfered in my life without asking me. You went behind my back. You paid for things. You watched me without telling me who you were." "Yes, I did all of that. Why didn't you just tell me?" "Because if Foster found out that someone was investigating him, he would have buried your case. I had to move carefully. For your sake, and for every other mother he had done this to." Serena looked away. She stared at the refrigerator. Zoe's drawings were still pinned there, the house with the triangle roof, the 2 stick figures holding hands. The silence stretched. Marcus didn't try to fill it. He had said what he came to say. The rest was up to her. Finally, Serena spoke. "You manipulated my life." Marcus nodded. "I did. And you'd do it again." In a heartbeat. Another silence. Then Serena looked at him, really looked at him. And something shifted behind her eyes. Not forgiveness exactly. Something deeper. Recognition. The recognition that someone had seen her fighting alone in the dark and had chosen, without being asked, to stand beside her. "You gave me back my daughter," she said. Her voice broke. "No," Marcus said firmly. "You fought for your daughter. You gathered the evidence. You sat in that courtroom and refused to surrender. I didn't give you your daughter back, Serena. I simply leveled the playing field." Serena's eyes filled. She pressed both hands against her face, and then she cried. Not from anger. Not from sorrow. From something she could not name. The overwhelming weight of being truly seen. When she looked up again, Zoe was standing in the doorway holding a crayon drawing. She looked at Marcus, then at her mother, then back at Marcus. "Are you my mommy's friend?" Marcus looked at Serena. Serena wiped her eyes. Then she nodded. "Yes, baby. He is." 2 years later, Serena stood on a stage in a blue cap and gown. The auditorium at the University of Houston was filled with families cheering as names were called one by one. When they announced her name, Serena Denise Mitchell, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, a voice rang out from the second row, louder than any other. "That's my mommy." Zoe was standing on a chair, holding a poster board she had made with markers and glitter. The letters were crooked but completely readable. "That's my mommy." Next to Zoe, Dorothy was crying, the quiet, steady kind of weeping that comes from years of prayers finally being answered. And next to Dorothy, in a simple grey suit with no tie, sat Marcus Holt. He wasn't crying, but his eyes were wet. And he was smiling. Marcus had funded Serena's nursing degree through the Cornerstone Fund, a full scholarship, books, supplies, and a monthly stipend so she could reduce her hours at Sunrise Senior Care and focus on her studies. Serena had argued about it at first. She didn't want charity. "This isn't charity," Marcus had told her. "This is an investment in you." After graduation, Serena took a position at Memorial Hermann Hospital. Better pay, better hours. A career she had dreamed about since she was 16 years old, watching her mother come home from night shifts at the hospital laundry. But that wasn't the accomplishment Serena was most proud of. On the first Saturday of every month, Serena drove to the community center in Alief, the same recreation center where Zoe had once spilled lemonade on a stranger's shoes. She walked in, set up a folding table, and ran a workshop she had created herself. She called it Know Your Rights. It was a free legal education program for single parents facing custody disputes. Serena would sit with them one by one and explain the things nobody had explained to her: what a guardian ad litem was and how to request one, what constituted judicial bias, how to file a motion for reconsideration, where to find legal aid, what questions to ask, what rights they had that nobody ever told them about. She always said upfront that she was not a lawyer. But she knew the system now. She had been through it. She had been crushed by it. And she had survived. Some days only 2 or 3 people showed up. Some days the room was full. It didn't matter. Serena showed up every single time. Marcus and Serena stayed close. Not romantic, but something rarer than that. Something different. He became the family she chose. She became the person who reminded him why he had started this work in the first place. Zoe called him Mr. Marcus. Then just Marcus. And eventually, when she was 8, she started calling him Grandpa Marcus. He never corrected her. He just smiled. One evening, sitting on the bench in Catherine's garden, Zoe asleep on his lap after a long Sunday dinner, Marcus looked at Serena and said, "You know, I thought I was saving you that day in the courtroom." Serena smiled. "And I think you might have saved me. But I think maybe I saved you a little bit too." Sometimes justice doesn't arrive on its own. Sometimes it needs someone brave enough to walk into the room and remind the system who it was built to protect. Now, I want to be honest with you. This is a fictional story, but the problems it explores are very real. In the United States, millions of parents walk into family court every year without a lawyer. Not because they don't love their children. Because they cannot afford representation. The system was designed to serve everyone, but it does not always work that way. If you or someone you know is facing a custody dispute without legal help, please look into legal aid resources in your state. Organizations like the Legal Aid Foundation exist in nearly every state and provide free legal assistance to those who qualify. The system is not perfect, but knowing your rights is the very first step toward protecting your family. I wrote this story because I believe every child deserves to be with the parent who loves them most, not the parent who can afford the best lawyer. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. See you on the next one.